Hey everybody, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette. And we're back here for another Saturday morning chat about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And Danny, how you doing this Saturday morning, man?
Good. We got some basketball on tap in a little bit. We have some recruiting news, although it's been a little bit quiet lately. It's still some news. Never a dull moment in Nebraska world. And I'm doing good. I'm just hoping that this cold weather will go away soon.
Yeah, the cold weather, it's not great. It's warming up a little bit where I am, but yeah, we got, Nebraska basketball today, another big game on the road at Maryland. We have, Caitlin Clark coming to Lincoln today, so that should be
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, some recruiting news, a lot of different football things going on there. So, if you guys, see this coming up on the screen here, before we kind of get into the topic, make sure that you guys, hit the subscribe button and make sure you do us a big favor there. If you haven't done that already. But yeah, Danny, I guess Maryland and Nebraska today. So I mean, look at it earlier this week. Got the big win over Ohio State. By 14 or whatever. And that really, seemed to kind of solidify, the last two wins on Nebraska's kind of spot in bracketology. They're up to a 9 seed right now. But an important game today. We got Vince joining us in the chat there. Good morning, Vince.
Good morning, Vince.
Go Big Red to everybody who's joining us today. But yeah, what do you think about this matchup today on the road against Maryland? Kind of hopefully the Huskers can keep their momentum rolling here that they've built lately.
Maryland's always a tough place to play on the road. Frankly, any Big Ten team for us this year has been a tough place to play on the road. But I think it's going to be a very entertaining game. I'm curious to see today if Casey Tominaga will have his minutes upped a little bit. He was kind of he didn't really play too much against Ohio State, and I'm wondering why that is. I haven't heard anything on the injury front. I don't know if maybe I missed something and you have, but to be completely honest with you, I think the offense flowed a little bit better with him off the floor. I'm not denying his production and what he can do, but I do think, they're able to run the offense a little bit through Brink Masden. He put up a, career night against Ohio State. So I'm wondering how Tominaga will factor into the equation today, if at all.
Yeah, that was a little bit interesting. I don't know if it was just a case of, Fred liked the guys on the floor and liked how that was kind of rolling. I know that we, in terms of injury news, there is some injury news that Juwan Gary will be out again today. So there was, talk of him potentially, returning. He's still day to day. So, wish that he would come back for this one, but you obviously don't want to rush him back, and they don't necessarily need to. But they are going to be down, Rashawn Gary again today. Yeah, I'm not
Juwan
sure.
Gary, not Rashawn Gary. If we had Rashawn Gary, then we'd be unstoppable.
I meant to say Juwan Gary. I must have just mumbled it, but yeah, he's been done a really good job this year. It'll be interesting with matching up against Maryland. How they've been a kind of an up and down team, and they are a slight favorite over the Huskers, but they're 12-8, 4-5 in the Big Ten. One thing that just striking me, they don't have really anybody that plays a ton that's taller than 6'6" or 6'9", I should say. They have one guy, Julian Reese, who's 6'9". They also have Donta Scott, who's 6'7". You probably will know that name, but everybody else is like 6'6" and below. So it will be interesting to see how Nebraska plays that. If they use CJ Wilcher more as a 4 guy, if they try to go big with Josiah Leak and take advantage, because they have done that at times, and it's it worked pretty well. I mean, when they pounded the ball into Rink Mass the other night. So we'll see how they kind of attack this Maryland team.
I'd love to see more Josiah Leak. I mean, he's had a great stretch of games here, and he's really, established his presence offensively. And I think we've been able to see him really expand his game and take his game to the next level. And so if they play inside more instead of shooting threes, I'm totally okay with that. And, hopefully CJ Wilcher can have another big game off the bench. He's been the more consistent three-point shooter as of late. So, I mean, his development has been great to see. I know we talked about it on the last show, but I'll be interested to see what he does today.
Yeah, he's really played well, and he got 30 minutes the other night and was spectacular. And I love, like I said, his attitude all year. I do think that this is a game where he could see a lot of time. And Dante Scott he's a 6'7" guy, but he can shoot the three. He's kind of a difficult matchups. I mean, you've got Bryce Williams. You could throw CJ on him a little bit. I just love that CJ is. I mean, you could play him, almost 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, he could almost play any of those spots for you if you really needed him to. So he's been spectacular. One thing that's really interesting about Maryland is they play really good defense. They don't shoot the three ball well. So that is always interesting to me because Nebraska obviously has given up a lot of threes this year, but Maryland's they shoot like 29% from three. They don't make a lot. So yeah, it'll be an interesting matchup if the Huskers offense can be effective against their defense, which, I mean, there's not many teams that slow down Nebraska offensively because, Fred they've always had a very good offensive attack, even the years when they haven't been that great. So if they can, get to 70 points, I feel like Maryland's not that great offensively that they could do a good enough job on defense to, hold them under and get a road win today, which would be huge. I mean, this is a key stretch. I mean, you're playing at Illinois, at Northwestern, and home against Wisconsin. So even though Nebraska is kind of riding high right now, I mean, things can flip very quickly, and you don't want to pass up any, winnable opportunities, I guess, on the road. And of these next 3 games, this is probably the most winnable, I would say.
And you mentioned Maryland's poor shooting from the 3-point line, and you have to wonder if that will play into Nebraska's favor a little bit today, especially because at times they've struggled to get back on defense when it comes to rotating and playing inside and then going back outside to defend the perimeter. So, Maryland's poor 3-point shooting may help Nebraska as they try to win this game.
And, it occurs to me, I guess, we can definitely talk more about this game and whatever you guys want to throw it. If you have any topics you want to, get going in the chat, throw it in there. Anybody who's out there watching in YouTube and Facebook, but I think it is important to, address obviously Jim Harbaugh leaving. I think that's a pretty big deal for Big Ten and what that could mean, for Nebraska. It was interesting, that Matt Rule's name got thrown out a tiny bit by Pete Thamel, but there's a very realistic scenario had things played out differently, with Jim Harbaugh, like in 2021 with that Vikings interview. If he takes that job, I think there's a very real chance that Matt Rule is the head coach at Michigan right now, and Nebraska's, obviously doesn't have Matt Rule. So it's interesting how all the dominoes work out. And instead of, Matt Rule being at Michigan, Harbaugh stays, and now he's at Nebraska. They hire Sharon Moore, which I do think is a good hire, but I also don't think he's Jim Harbaugh. So is this, do you see this as another thing that maybe is opening up that window in the Big Ten for Nebraska to kind of, move itself back up near the top?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you could look at it from an overall college football point of view, too. I mean, Nick Saban is retired. Jim Harbaugh is in the NFL. So I think what we're looking at is, a power shift. Sure, Georgia and Kirby Smart have been, really consistent over the last couple of years, but I think, not having Harbaugh and Saban, for example, really opens things up. And, it's kind of interesting that all this happens before the expanded playoffs, so that will open things up even more. And I think it's good for college football in the sense that you can get some fresh blood into the mix for the playoffs. And, I think for Nebraska, quite honestly, I think the challenge, and for everybody else in the Big Ten, is going to be Ohio State. I mean, sure, Ryan Day has had his shortcomings, but I think they're like a shark smelling blood in the water. I think they smell that this is the year that they can really, get the Big Ten championship and play at a high level. I mean, look at all the money they've spent in the transfer portal. I mean, they mean business, and they're not going to be taken lightly.
Yeah, they have built a talented roster, but like I said before, they've had the same talented roster, before. So it's like giving Ohio State, another 5-star. Does that really move the needle that much? I mean, Caleb Downs, I think, is a big time player, but I still, when I'm looking at, I saw a ranking of quarterbacks, of this season, and Will Howard, was in the top 10, but I'm looking at and I don't think that Will Howard is a top 10 quarterback in college football. I just don't. I don't think he's that great. And so, I mean, honestly, let me pose you this. Do you really think that Will Howard is going to beat Georgia's defense? Is he good enough to win a national championship as your quarterback? I don't think that he is. I honestly don't.
He's not, but if you put players around him, and I guess you could say it's for any quarterback, but with the talent that Ohio State has around them, and their ability to develop wide receivers in that wide receiver room, even with the losses of, for example, Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he could, because
Maybe I don't.
Georgia is also, relying on, younger quarterbacks to develop the room. They don't have a
No,
veteran
they got Carson Beck. That he's back from last year.
right, and he's only a sophomore. So
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
he's like I don't know. I don't think he's a sophomore. I think he's old. I think he's older than that. But I mean, I think he's probably the Heisman front runner right now.
that's fair, but he struggled last year at times, and so, I don't think. I think what's going to save Georgia is, their defense and their running game, quite frankly. So I don't know. I think Ohio State could make a push, because, quite honestly, I'm not this iteration of the Bulldogs. I'm not terribly sold on yet, but we'll see.
See, I think that I think anybody who's not ranking Georgia number one is absolutely crazy. Because I think that I think Georgia, for one, I think they have every bit the same amount of talent as Ohio State. Like there's no way you can tell me Ohio State's more talented. And Georgia didn't have to add a bunch of pieces in the transfer portal. They didn't have to add a new quarterback. They don't have to make a bunch of guys happy. Ohio State's got, all these running backs and, all these mouths to feed. And, it seems to me, I just haven't, I mean, show me a time where a team's bought a bunch of players in the portal and it's really worked out. I know Michigan State had that year that they were good, but it was really because they got one player. They got the running back. I mean, outside of that, they didn't really have that much in the transfer portal. And I mean, you look at, Texas A&M, they tried to buy all those recruits and they had the best recruiting class of all time and they stunk and they all left because they paid them a bunch of money. I'm not convinced that, buying guys out of the portal is the key to success, because you still have to have the culture. You still have to have, all those team components. And I'm just not sure how that's going to, so I guess to me, when you look at it, it's like, yeah, Ohio State's trying to build like a super team, a super talented team, but Georgia's just as talented, except Georgia's got the culture. Georgia has the coach. Georgia has the continuity. So, I mean, to me, if it's a Ohio State Georgia comparison right now, I would pick Georgia every day of the week and twice on Sunday, because I just don't, until Ohio State actually proves it. I mean, when's the last time that Ryan Day won one of these games? I mean, it's been a while. I mean, he hasn't won a game like this since 2020. So, where he has beaten Michigan or Georgia, or I mean, even Oregon. They have to go. Ohio State next year has to go to Eugene, and that Oregon team is damn good. So, I mean, I take Dylan Gabriel over Will Howard. You know what I mean? So I get Ohio State and everybody, I get the love for Ohio State, but I'm also still not convinced that they're going to beat Michigan next year. As long as if Michigan doesn't lose any of their big time guys in the transfer portal, especially on defense, I think they're going to have the best defense in college football next year. So, I mean, I wouldn't count them out yet quite either.
No, I wouldn't count them out yet either, but there's also the adjustment period of having a new coach. Granted, Moore is not necessarily new. I mean, Moore was a great hire for Michigan in terms of familiarity and, and in terms of keeping, that sort of culture going, to bring them back to culture. But we'll see how it all plays out. I do think it's good for college football that, guys like Harbaugh and Saban are gone, because it just allows more opportunities for others to kind of step up.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, a window, for Nebraska, but yeah, I mean, I think that Michigan will over time take maybe a little bit of a step back, because I think that Jim Harbaugh was the best coach in college football, honestly, because I don't think I just don't see Kirby Smart going to Ann Arbor. Like I mean, if you take away all of Kirby Smart's 5-star talents, I don't know that he's winning that much. Like I don't think that he could go to Michigan with a bunch of recruiting classes ranked in the 20s and develop those kids into a team that could beat Alabama or Georgia. I just don't. So, I mean, I think that Michigan just lost the best coach in college football. I think Alabama, just lost one. Because, I mean, if you look at Kirby Smart, man, like he only beat Nick Saban one time. He only beat Nick Saban that one national championship game. So Nick Saban's gone, his big nemesis there. And then I think the other big program that like Michigan had a chance to really, make a push to be a team like Georgia or Alabama. And now I think that is slightly out the window with Jim Harbaugh being gone. So I do think that this all, like, man, Kirby Smart's got to be feeling pretty great right now. And I probably wouldn't mind being Dan Lanning either. Because, like, the other thing, too, there's only two coaches right now Kirby Smart and Dabo Sweeney, who have won a national championship at their current school. And Clemson is not a program that I
They're
would
not getting
consider,
back there anytime
you
soon.
know. So I mean, it's like yeah, like you said, it's a landscape, and to bring it back to Nebraska, since it's college football is more wide open, I think, than it's ever been with the transfer portal. But the good teams though, like Georgia's, they lose guys, but I don't think they've lost a starter in the transfer portal. Like they're not losing guys that, preferred starters. So I'm interested to see what happens with Michigan, and see if their guys, hang in there. But I honestly don't see the same thing happening with with Alabama and Washington since Sharon Moore was the hire.
I'm curious to see how Alabama does. I mean, I think Kalen DeBoer is a very good coach, but the SEC is a totally different ballgame. So we'll see how he does. But I'm interested how it plays out, and if he can not kind of fill the shoes of Nick Saban, because I don't know if anybody will be able to do that, but kind of keep the program afloat.
I mean, yeah, if anybody can, it's Kalen DeBoer. I think he is, a spectacular coach. He's won like 90% of his games and NAIA and D2 and, whatever. He won at Fresno State. He won at Washington. So, I mean, if I just feel like if anybody can do it, it's going to be him. But it is going to be, I feel like, a different way, and I don't think that Alabama is going to recruit as well. They're still going to be Alabama. I mean, it's not like they're going to be recruiting poorly or whatever. I mean, Alabama could basically probably put no effort into it and still have a better class than Nebraska just because they're Alabama. I mean, that might be taking it too far, but you get the point I'm trying to make. But it's just, is he going to make that great offense and all that stuff? Is that going to work in the SEC? I guess that's my question. And is he going to be able to recruit enough defensive talent to, especially like on the defensive line and stuff? Because if you don't have elite talent on the defensive line, you're not winning big in college football, whether it's the Big Ten, the SEC, or whatever. Like, look at defensive lines. That's what wins you games in college football. A great defensive line and great quarterback play, honestly.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, it's also going to be a question of if Alabama can keep the in-state talent home. Because now you have Georgia, and, it's a little bit harder to recruit against Kirby Smart when you're not Nick Saban. I mean, let's be honest here. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic changes as well. And if, the Alabama recruits become more of a toss-up, and if the Georgia recruits tend to stay home and not go to Alabama, because there were a lot of Georgia kids at Alabama as well.
Yeah, a lot of Georgia. I mean, yeah, because Georgia's like, people don't talk about Georgia enough, and they mentioned Texas and Florida and California, but Georgia has, I swear that Georgia, in terms of like top 100 guys, I swear they have more per capita than anybody, and I don't have anything to back that up other than just every time I see a player from Georgia, it seems like they're ranked in like, because go look at Georgia's classes, man. It's like half Georgia kids, and they're all studs. It's unbelievable. I mean, the freaking Buford itself would probably, they probably have like 10 guys a year that are signing with college teams. So I mean, that is a very good point. I think that's going to be interesting to see how Alabama and other teams are able to recruit the state of Georgia going forward.
Well, we've had success out of Buford too, even. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's definitely a hotbed.
Yeah, we've had a little bit of success out of Buford,
Gabe Irvin, I mean.
And, Dylan Raiola.
No big deal. Well, see, I'm hesitant. I'm not ready to crown him yet. I want him to succeed, but I'm not until I see it on the field, because I thought the 2021 team was going to be, the defining team of the Scott Frost era in a good way, and it turned out to be the defining team of the Scott Frost era in all the worst ways possible. So close, but yet so far.
That team was, that was really frustrating. That, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But
can you imagine Trey Palmer with Dylan Raiola, or let's see. I was just thinking about this the other day. Trey Palmer with Dylan Raiola, or somebody even like Samori Torre with Dylan Raiola. Like, there are some players that we've had in the past that would work great for the program right now.
Yeah, that's very true. But when I think about it, man, Dylan Raiola is going to be throwing to Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd, Carter Nelson, and Thomas Fedoni, and I like these transfer receivers, but I'm just going to say that this is a prediction that I'm going to make. I don't think a transfer is leading this team in receptions or receiving yards. So I'm just going to say that it's going to be it's going to be Coleman, Lloyd, or Fedoni, in my opinion.
I think that's fair, but I think these transfer wide receivers fit the offense very well. It's not like, I hate to bring up names here, but Oliver Martin, who had stone hands and couldn't catch anything. I think these transfer receivers are a little bit better than what we've had in the past. But I mean, I think to me, it's all going to go back to the depth at the running back position, because we had a lot of depth last season, and by week 4, we were scrambling for depth because of injury. So I think that's going to be important to watch as well.
Yeah, and I agree, and I do think that these Isaiah Nayor and Jamal Banks are going to make contributions. I just think that Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd are going to make bigger jumps than people realize.
Yeah.
I just think that people, Malachi Coleman, excuse me, is a freak though. I mean, he's 6'5" and he runs like 4.4. And last year we talked about that. If Heinrich or some of those guys could put the ball on him, like he would have had more big plays. So like when you watch Dylan Rayola just flicking the wrist, like I imagine just like Malachi Coleman running down the sideline and him just flicking that wrist up, and Jalen Lloyd too, because I mean, you think about, it's just so interesting to me now, because like Jalen Lloyd last year, it's just who are you going to cover? Who are you going to cover as a defense now? When are you going to focus on Malachi Coleman, who can burn you deep? Are you going to focus on Jalen Lloyd, who had three receptions of over 50 yards last year? One of only two Big Ten players to do that. Then you've got Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor, who are both guys who can get down the field, especially Nayor. I mean, he is a true deep threat. I would say Banks is the most complete receiver, where he can do it all, but Nayor definitely has the speed too. And then on top of that, you've got Fedoni and Carter Nelson. So it's like when Nebraska, whether they're in 11 personnel, whether they're, in a full spread set, I mean, it's going to put a lot of pressure on defenses, because then, on top of that, if you have a light box and you don't have enough guys in the box, like Matt Rule and these guys will just run the damn ball at you all day. So it's just when I think about that perspective, and from a defensive side and all the things you're going to have to take away, I think this offense is going to be pretty good.
Too many guys in the box is never a good thing. But anyway, I just
it's like when you get that. It's like when I get that light box on Madden, man. I only got 5-6 guys in the box. Like I'm running that crap every day. I will run that stuff all day, baby. I'm like, so that's what I want to see out of these guys, man. They like come out in their nickel defense, and then they're like, oh, gotta watch out for Rayola, and then he just hands the ball off like 25 times.
That's the point I wanted to make. Now that I just remembered it, you have to plan that. You have to plan for the quarterback now. I mean, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sure, you had to plan for the running ability of Harburg last year, and even Sims, and to a degree Purdy, but you were never, if you were a defense, you were never threatened by the possibility of a deep ball, or, if you were a Nebraska fan, you were just hoping the deep ball got there. And so now you have to plan for the running game. You have to plan for the passing attack, and you also have to plan for the speed at the wide receiver position. And, I think, Malachi Coleman, Jalen Lloyd, Demetrius Bell, I just blanked on his name, but I know you mentioned him earlier.
Well, Jaden Doss, I haven't mentioned, but he's another one.
Oh yeah. Well, see, there's so many names that we
I know, man. It's crazy.
Remember. It's crazy. So I think it will help from a game planning perspective as well. And I mean, I think Rayola is ready to take the spotlight, and I think this group gets what it means to play for Nebraska, and I think it's going to be fun to watch what Marcus Satterfield can scheme up offensively, because, like I've said before, this deep ball, truck it type of offense is what he wants to run. He looked so poor last year because we didn't have the horses to do so. He tried, but he just couldn't get it done because we didn't have the dudes.
Well, it does make it difficult. I mean, last year there, when you have 7-8 guys in the box and you have no threat of throwing the football, and
right.
I mean, teams would just dare Nebraska to throw it, and they were able to do that belly option thing a couple times, and that worked. But like you said, this year that's not going to be, if that happens, I mean, Nebraska's probably going to, I mean, they'll run at it, but they're going to come out and take some play action shots down the field and say like, okay, if you're going to give us one-on-one with Coleman and Nayor and those guys, like we'll take our shots because our quarterback can hit those throws, and at least puts a lot of stress on you. Like not only it's that thing when, I know that Woody Hayes back in the day said, like, when you throw the ball, there's three things that can happen and two of them are bad, but that's not true, because you throw the football up. I mean, yeah, you could get an interception, you could also get a completion, and on top of that, you could also get a pass interference. So it's like I just feel like with Raiola's arm talent and the way he can place the ball, he just is really good at putting the football where the receiver can go get it. And I mean, we've seen that in the NFL where that, puts guys at a disadvantage trying to come back and make plays on it. And they don't call stuff quite as readily in college. And obviously it's only a 15-yard penalty, but pass interference at any rate. But I think we're going to see.
We wouldn't know. We never got any pass interference calls that benefited us.
But I think they're definitely going to take some more shots down the field, and I'm excited. I'm just excited for all of it, man. Carter Nelson got to 1,000 points. I wish he was enrolling early, but I understand why he's not. I'm glad that he's going through that, and I love that he's a competitor. But man, he is exciting, and I think that Fedoni just working in. I mean, Ja'Cory Barney and Nelson, and like Davon Hall and some of these guys, and then when Nayor and Banks then move on, some of those guys can step up and kind of fill in. But yeah, McMorris, he's another guy that's coming in late. I think he must be playing basketball as well. But yeah, it's an exciting time, I think, to be a Nebraska fan, and the defense is looking good. They still haven't said, I guess, when they're starting spring practice, but I know I've seen so much stuff on Twitter hoping that Ernest Hausman's going to hit the portal, but I just don't see it happening. Maybe I could be wrong, but I just don't see it.
What are the chances Rule jumps ship in 3 to 5 years if Nebraska stays above average or better in the past 10 years for a premium job? Honestly, the more I see him being speculated on these potential lists, like there's got to be something going on there, or else he wouldn't appear on these lists, because he is known as a program builder and he is known for turning things around quickly. So I think I would be a fool if I said it probably wasn't going to happen.
I think I'm not that worried about it, honestly, but the one job that worries me is Penn State. That's the one job that worries me with Matt Rule, because he played there. He's from Pennsylvania. And if James Franklin leaves, I think Penn State would be stupid to not make a run at Matt Rule. I don't know. I really don't know if he would. I have a hard time seeing him leave Nebraska for another team in the conference, but you just don't know what that might be his dream job. He might be sitting there like, man, it'd be so awesome if I could coach Penn State. You know what I mean? Like, I have no idea. I have no peer view into his mind or what, like his dreams are, but I know that he loves it at Nebraska. And I can't see him leaving for like Alabama, or Ohio State, or, I just don't see him doing that. Texas A&M. I mean, I know that there was some mention there, but that just doesn't, I don't know. That just doesn't seem like a fit to me. He seems like a Big Ten coach, but if somebody is able to steal away James Franklin, or if Penn State finally gets, sick of never winning the big one and they decide to move on from him, that's the one I would worry about. But other than that, I don't see if they're average or above average, because I mean that's going to reflect poorly on him too. You have to realize that as well. I mean, this is if Matt Rule's not winning here, like, is another team going to be banging down his door if Nebraska's like going 7-5 or 8? I don't think that. But if this team's winning Big Ten championships, then yeah, maybe that's just something you have to deal with, and that's the price I would happily pay.
Yeah, and again, I would rather lose a coach because they're doing well than to buy out all their contracts because they suck. I mean, we've done that enough already. And so, we'll just have to see how everything plays out. And, I trust Trev Alberts to kind of, steer everything in the right direction and make a good hire if something like that happens. I've been impressed with the job that Alberts has done in terms of personnel decisions to this point. I think sticking with Hoiberg was the right move. I think hiring Matt Rule was the right move. And, he seems to be very sound in his decision making as far as athletic personnel.
Yeah, he's made some really good decisions. I think Trev Alberts, he's kind of steadied the ship in Nebraska athletics in a lot of ways. Just making sure there's steady leadership, and he supported Fred Hoiberg last year. I mean, some people maybe were wondering if he should stay, and people even this year have been talking about Fred Hoiberg getting fired.
I was wondering if Fred Hoiberg should stay, but I mean, this year, there's been some frustrating ones, but by and large, I think, um, I think he's done a really good job of putting things together, and I think this is probably going to be his best team. Nebraska is a premium job. What do you think about that? Because I
That's
would say no.
Husker Chuck's comment. I still think that
Mhm.
I mean, okay, I guess like it depends how you're gonna say premium. Like, is it
Yeah,
is it Alabama? Is it Ohio State? Maybe not, but I would put Nebraska right there with the Michigan job. I don't think like, all things equal, I really don't think that the Michigan job is better than Nebraska. I don't think Texas A&M is better than Nebraska.
Texas A&M's a mess, so no.
What was that?
Texas A&M's a mess right
Oh,
now. So.
yeah, and in the SEC, like, I mean, and yeah, maybe like I would say maybe Texas, Alabama, but that's the thing too is like Georgia, like before Georgia started winning, I don't think that people, like 10 years ago, like Georgia was a solid program, but I don't think anybody viewed that as like the best job in college football. So I mean, things change over time, and yeah, and like the thing I think that makes Nebraska a good job still is it has the tradition, the fan is you have everything that you need to win here, and I know that yeah, maybe you don't have like the recruiting background or the recruiting um, you know, footprint of that you have with Texas and USC and Cal, but make no mistake, like there's no reason Nebraska can't be a top 15 program every single year. So I think in terms of that, with the resources and what's invested in this program and the money and all that stuff, I do think that I think it's a premium job. I think it's one of the best 10 or 15 jobs in college football. If that's premium, I mean, it's not maybe Alabama, but I mean, look back when Nick Saban went there, though. Alabama wasn't even Alabama at that time. So, I mean, everything goes through cycles. And I think it's all about the resources that you have. And it's like when Nebraska, if everything is working right, if everything's at its best, I still believe that Nebraska can compete for college football national championships. I'm not saying they can win them, but I definitely think they can compete for them for sure.
Who was pre Nick Saban Alabama? Mike Shula, was it?
I think it was Mike Shula or maybe Dennis Franchione. I mean, there was a bunch of guys,
I'm
but
gonna
yeah,
look it up,
I
but
think
I
it
think it
was
was
Mike
Mike Shula.
Shula. I
And
think
to
Shula,
Jason,
yeah.
yeah, and to Jason's point, last year you're not going to see what you saw last year. I can almost guarantee it. I mean, we didn't even have a quarterback that could consistently throw 15 yards down the field last
Yeah.
year. So I don't think we're going to see that again. I mean, we saw a very run heavy offense partly because we had to be, and I think it's going to change a lot this year.
Yeah, I think absolutely it's they tried to adjust their personnel. I mean, Nebraska threw the ball like as they threw the ball less than any Power 5 team in college football. Like the only teams that probably threw the ball less, I think, were like Air Force, Navy, and Army. I mean, Nebraska, for all intents and purposes, ran running an option offense last
Yeah.
year. So I mean, like let's not get it twisted. Like this team's not throwing the ball 18 times a game with Dylan Raiola. I
No.
mean, I'm not saying they're going to try to throw the ball 40 times a game, but there's definitely going to be a lot different play calling, and it's just going to be a whole different ball game. And I think if the defense can keep where they're at, man, and that's we all want to take it for granted. Like nothing, you can't take anything for granted that the defense is going to be just as good. I think that they are,
No,
but
there too.
if they can do that, and literally if we can just cut out the turnovers, like I mean, I do expect the scoring to increase, but just that simple fact of if we can cut out the turnovers, we'll win a lot of games just based off of that fact.
I'm excited to see the development of Francois Umamalian this year, and Riley Van Poppel and some of the younger guys that got some playing time last year who can take the next step. I'm excited to see them, like you said in our last show, Dylan Rogers and guys like that. So I think there's a lot of talent on this defense, and I'm excited to see what Tony White can cook up again this year because. All like you said too, all we needed last year was a good quarterback, and we would have been playing the first week of December. So I think and I think this schedule, at least the first half of it, is very manageable.
Yeah, it is manageable. There are some tough games on there for sure. It would be nice to actually get off to a positive start. That's important, and when getting a nice game against UTEP there would be good, and then it would be great to beat Colorado. It's not going to be easy, and I don't want to count out Coach Prime. I mean, everybody, it's easy to make fun of him, but everybody was making fun of him last year too, and they came and they whipped our butt in week 2 or whatever. So
Because of Jeff Sims fumbles. Let's not get that twisted either.
well, you're right
Jeff
about
Sims holds
that.
onto the damn ball. We don't lose to Colorado.
If Jeff Sims could catch a snap, for Christ's sake. I mean, we're like down at the 25-yard line, and then he just can't. It's like third and I don't remember what, but 3rd and 2, and just drops the snap. And I wish I could say that was the only time he did that in that game, but it wasn't. Or the only time he did that last season, but it wasn't.
And the funny thing was, it wasn't only Sims either. All of our quarterbacks had trouble handling snaps. It's like, what are we doing here, fellas?
Yeah, I know. That was crazy. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I hope that hopefully that doesn't happen again, man. Like, hopefully this team. Yeah, I don't even want to say it. I don't want to say the C word, but anyway, let's move on. But
what's the C word? What's the C word, Chris?
Cursed.
Oh, okay.
Cursed. Don't want to say we're cursed, but there, you made me say it.
Well,
the quarterback curse, because we've just been, man. It's like last year. It was just like, my God, how can the ball? Like there was some of those games where it was like, okay, man, they can't fumble again. And then 2 plays later, they'd fumble again. You're like, what is happening, man?
Well, it's pretty amazing that we had no Power 5 quarterbacks on the roster last year. Like all 3, like just struggled so bad.
Yeah, and like Chuck said, they weren't bad snaps. It was like hit them right in the like literally right in the hands.
Yeah,
so it's like
because if you remember 3 years ago, we were complaining about bad snaps. Now we have good snaps and we can't even handle them.
Yeah, it's
although
crazy.
Cam Jurgens is playing good in the NFL, so.
And I'm thinking he's going to get his shot now at center with Jason Kelsey. I mean, retiring because that's pretty. That seems like that's why they drafted Cam Jurgens was to eventually. He's a beast, man. Like, yeah, I love those kind of picks in the draft, and that's I don't know. I just like taking it back to Ohio State. Like, I mean, yeah, they're great, and they've got a ton of talent, but we'll see. Man. I'm just interested to see how that plays out. If all that. I just don't know. We'll see. They're going to be good, though. It's not like they're going to lose a bunch of games on their schedule. They're going to win 11 games. It's just, are they going to beat Oregon? Are they going to beat Michigan? Are they going to beat Georgia? I think they'll probably make the semifinals. Like, I think I have them making but I would say that either, I think Ohio State, Oregon, or Michigan's going to win the Big Ten. I think those are the 3 teams right now, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was either one of them.
Yeah, and I'm just going to be excited to see how the playoff itself plays out because that's something new, something desperately needed, meaning expansion, and those games will be fun to watch as well. I don't know if it's going to be a March Madness type of thing where there's upsets because football is a little bit more, I don't want to say predictable, but you can definitely tell the skill disadvantages a little bit more, but, I think it'll still be fun.
Yeah, it will be, I think. I don't think you'll see quite as many upsets, but you never know. It'll be interesting because we'll finally get some of these teams that are really hot, maybe coming into down the stretch, and that just missed out on the playoff because they had a couple of losses. So like those teams will get their opportunities. So it would have been interesting to see what happened. If Georgia actually got in the playoff this year as a 6th seed, because I think they probably would have made the national championship game. They may have even beaten Michigan in that scenario. So.
And you wonder if the expanded playoff limits some of the opt-outs at the end of the season. So, I mean,
yeah, I would think so. I mean, I know.
Go
ahead. I know people think that guys will opt out, but I mean, I think if there's a championship on the line, it's not like guys are opting out of their conference championship games. I think they do opt out of these, the Mayo Bowl because it means absolutely nothing to them. And
I don't blame them at all.
But I don't see guys opting out of the playoff. I know some have said that, not you, but I've seen it on others like, oh, you're going to have guys opting out of those first round playoff games. I just don't believe that. So maybe, you never say never, but
you have a chance to win those games and and increase your stock that way too. So.
Yeah. And I just don't, I know that I just don't believe that kids are as, I think that they care more than people, want to say that they do, just because I work in, high school sports. So I talk to a lot of kids at this age and I know it's easy to say oh, kids don't care about this or that anymore. But they do. I think that they still really care about their teammates and they're invested in the sport, but they're not going to lay their bodies on the line for an exhibition game. And I think and a lot of kids do. It's just the ones that have NFL futures and you can't blame them for not doing it. Means nothing.
And neither do a lot of the coaches. I mean, you look at Kalen DeBoer, you look at, San Jose State's coach who transferred after Trevor Purdy committed. I mean, people like to say, "Oh, they got to be loyal to the coach," and blah blah blah. Coaches aren't loyal either. I mean, nobody's loyal to either side. So, I mean, there is that too.
Yeah, I mean, look at we have, and I know Nick Saban retired, but 3 of the 4 teams in the playoff have new coaches next year. So, I mean, that just tells you where things are at in college football. It's kind of a power vacuum right now, and it'll be interesting to see who steps into it. Hopefully, Nebraska. My hope is that we just have just more parity, and we have less concentration of talent and everything, up on the top.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm looking at the comments here. Why the fixation? Oh,
Well, I
you
can
always
tell
do
you
that.
on Michigan. So, I mean, I just think because I know Michigan really well. I mean, yeah, they're going to need a new QB, but like I said, they're new off. Yeah, they have 5 new offensive linemen, and their offensive line is going to be better than Nebraska's, like 100%. Like I guarantee that for a fact. Donovan Edwards is a 5-star running back, dude. Like he had 2 40-yard touchdowns in the national championship game. They have 7 guys on their defense that are going to play in the NFL. They have 3 first-round picks. So, and 2 of them are at defensive tackle. They had the number 1 tight end. Like I just think that people are counting him out, and it's like, yeah, they do need to find a quarterback, but you can still do a lot if you have a really good defense, if you have elite running game and a dominant offensive line. Like I'm not saying they're going to be undefeated, but I think they can win 9 or 10 games for sure.
Yeah, and 9 or 10 games, may get you into the playoff, and then we'll see what happens from there. That's the other thing. I think this new playoff, you won't need to go 11-1 or 12-0 or even I think to some degree 10-2. I think you'll be able to get into the playoff not fairly easily, but a lot easier than it would be to get into the Final Four group of teams.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It'll absolutely be easier to get into that mix. And yeah, you got to win 9 or 10 games. If Nebraska wins 10 games this year, which I don't think is like insanely impossible when you look at the schedule, they'll be right in the playoff mix because it's going to be like, this is just my prediction. I think Oregon and Ohio State are going to make it. I think that Michigan will be in the mix, and I think Penn State will be in the mix, and maybe that'll be Nebraska. I really don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that like the ACC and the Big 12, I think it's going to be tough for those conferences to get more than one team in this tournament compared to the SEC and compared to the Big 10, because it's clear that the committee does not respect the ACC, and it's going to be even worse next year, in my opinion. And then the Big 12, the Big 12 is basically it's almost like it's barely above a Group of 5 league. I mean, it does not carry the weight. I mean, Arizona, Kansas State, Colorado, Kansas. I mean, Utah. There's just not a ton of heavyweights there. So, I mean, I just feel like there's going to be almost every year 4 bids available in the Big 10 and the SEC.
Yeah, and I think it'll be a good chance to get some of the classic, blue blood programs back into the national conversation as well. Maybe Penn State, maybe Miami, although I don't know what's going to happen in year 3 under Mario Cristobal, but just some of those household names that have been missing from the college football playoff in previous years. It'll be good to get some of those back again.
Yeah, definitely. It will be for sure. And another thing, I guess we'll see, later on today, it'll be interesting, if Nebraska can get a win. I know we got Caitlin Clark coming here today. We didn't talk about that very much either, but it is a big opportunity for Nebraska women's basketball, who's also they're in a similar position as the men's team. And if you could beat Caitlin Clark, man, that would I feel like that would punch their ticket to women's March Madness.
She's a heck of a player, so that would certainly be a big win for the ladies today. A big day of hoops as we enter the, I don't want to say stretch run, but we're getting close.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, we are getting into the stretch run. It's almost February next week, and
really, wow.
Yeah, it'd be February 1st, I think, on Thursday or Wednesday, maybe.
Okay.
So, and we've got 11 Big 10 games left though, so still a lot to play for Nebraska, but this is a big one today if they can get it here at Maryland. So, feel like we'll probably start wrapping up here soon, guys. If you got any other questions or anything, throw them in the chat. But yeah, we got some hoops coming up here. We got Nebraska at 11 Central Time, and then they're on the road. And then right after that, at 1 Central Time, I believe, is when the Nebraska women play Iowa. So you can just, if you're not going to the games, you can just hang out on your couch and enjoy basically 4 hours of Nebraska basketball, man.
Sounds like fun to me. And I mean, this team, no matter how it shakes out, both men's and women's, they're fun to watch.
They are fun to watch, and it's Nebraska basketball, the women's team. Britt Prince, 5-star recruit, is coming in too, and she's going to be a superstar. So this is an exciting team. I mean, I think obviously we'll be losing Jazz Shelley and some other players, but I'm blanking on. They have a girl on the team, Natalie Potts, who's been Big Ten Freshman of the Year about 5 times, or Freshman of the Week, excuse me, not Freshman of the Year, but she's been Big Ten Freshman of the Week about 5 times. So I'm really excited to see, how that kind of plays out.
I'm excited to see my boy Eli Rice play today. I'm the president of the Eli Rice fan club, so let's see if one conference dominates on.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not 8. I think 9. I think 9 wins, 9-3. You could still have a chance to get in.
I think that's a good question. Yeah, because I think honestly, you'd see a scenario like that with the SEC teams.
Yeah, or even the Big Ten. I mean, I think
the only bad thing about this playoff is that I think it's going to favor the SEC even more. And I already hate the SEC in terms of all the attention it gets. So we'll see, though. Maybe I'll be wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting, though, to see how the dynamics of all that work out, and because if the SEC is going to keep dominating, they're going to need, like Tennessee and LSU and some of these other programs to kind of like raise their game up a little bit. You know what I mean? So
as long as Brian Kelly's at LSU, that'll never happen. So
yeah,
Tennessee would be cool.
Tennessee looks dangerous, and they just got and they have an elite quarterback, and they just got the number 2 quarterback in 2025 too, who's really good. So I mean, they like people aren't talking about them, but of all the teams that I think could take advantage of the Alabama power vacuum down south, I think Tennessee is best position because Josh Heupel is really you talk about Kalen DeBoer, he's pretty darn good offensively. I mean, UCF, Oklahoma, everywhere he's went, things have worked out pretty well, on the offensive side of the ball. So I feel like Tennessee is going to be a team to watch in that league, and obviously Texas and Texas too. I mean, we shouldn't, Steve Sarkisian's got that thing rolling, man.
Yeah, they're in the SEC now. I always forget that. But
when Oklahoma, it's going to be tough. But yeah, I definitely to go back to the question, I could see a 9-win season making it. What if you're Alabama? Excuse me, and you've got your losses are on the road at Georgia, against Texas, and then at LSU, but you also beat Ole Miss and Tennessee. If you've beaten 2 top 15 teams. So I don't know, man. It's going to be, we're in uncharted waters here. How is the committee going to compare, say, a team that's maybe, 10-2 in the Big 12 to a team that's a 9-3 in the SEC? I mean, that's really what we're going to be looking at here. And I know, people are settling on the field. We're going to have just as many arguments about who should have been number 13 and number 12. You know what I mean? We're still going to have, they're still going to have those same debates. It's just, it'll feel a little bit less because it's not like Georgia getting left out, but you're going to, this year will be probably Penn State and Clemson or somebody for the last spot. You know what I mean? It'll be something like that. And so you're still going to have the fan bases that say they've been wronged.
It would be interesting to see what Clemson could do in that type of scenario, because ever since Trevor Lawrence left, Dabo has been struggling a little bit.
So here's an interesting question from Big Joe Walsh on a basketball front. I think, or no, how far does the state away from having 2 teams make it to the Elite 8?
I think we're still pretty far. I mean, if you're talking, I think Creighton probably has a better chance than the Huskers do right now. But I mean, the Elite 8, that's some really high level stuff, obviously. And I think Nebraska's good, but there's just some things in their game that they need to clean up that I don't think they can fix, this year.
It's really hard to say because, you've seen teams. I mean, who expected George Mason to make the Final Four? The NCAA tournament's so crazy. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but let's remember Nebraska's never won an NCAA tournament game, so they've never made it, to the second round, let alone the second weekend. But yeah, it's not like impossible to, you get upsets. I mean, it really is the NCAA tournament more than anything. It really is about the matchups that you run into, and you could be slated to, you could be like a 6 seed and slated to face a 3 seed, and then that team gets upset, and then you're facing a 14 seed, so I mean, like how many times have we seen those different scenarios where you don't even have to beat like a top team to advance? So, you never know. But I would still say it's going to be a while away. And Creighton, I mean, even they haven't had that much success in the NCAA tournament that I can really remember.
Last year they got upset, I believe.
Yeah, I think they did. And I mean, I feel like they've got, I mean, I'm not trying to like talk down. I just feel like they've got upset a lot. That just happens. I mean, it's a one game. When you get in that
Look
one
at
game,
Purdue in the NCAA tournament.
yeah. I mean, yeah, Fairleigh Dickinson, it's just when you get in that one game situation, especially basketball, and you've only got 5 fouls too. I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, you look at that makes a real, especially like with a team like Purdue, you get Zach Ide into foul trouble, that makes a big difference. And so it's a 40-minute game and that goes quickly. And then if you have a guy, who's your best player who misses 10 minutes of that because of foul trouble, that's where it can, it can tighten up real quick and you make a few threes. And so that's why people love the tournament, even though it might not be the best way to determine the champion. It's the most exciting way. And so, it just would be fun to see Nebraska like in it. It's been a decade.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of decent Nebraska teams that just haven't been able to get over that hump.
Yep. So hopefully they can do that today. I think will be a big sign for both fronts. And on that, guys, we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. We'll be back on Monday for another episode of the Husker Big Red podcast. And we keep doing this every Saturday. So come back with us next weekend. And also check out huskerbigred.com. We've got constant updates on the Huskers there as well. So we do also have the website in addition to the YouTube page. So please support that as well. And thanks for hanging out with us, you guys. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.